ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for the closing bell with good friend and colleague, Mr. Ron Momilevsky at RonAceSports. Make sure you're following him on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it today. Apologies for the tardiness. I'm going to give a free plug because Hyannis Honda, the dealership, has me behind today. So again, apologies for not starting this at 5 Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Viva Tequila, Seltzer, CT Bets, Austin, that team second to none. Go try one where you drink adult beverages. And last but never least, AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com, Terry Smith on Facebook. Go follow him. While you're there, head on over to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Promo code SHRIMP. That's right, shrimp. A free 2-pound bag of the 1620, the big ones, whether shrimp cocktail for the Super Bowl, surf and turf, however you want to cook them, they're yours. With any order with Terry. Check out his subscription plan. 4 great plans. Set it and forget it. Start eating healthy. Saturday is February 1st. So without further ado, Mr. Ron Momilevsky.
Good afternoon, Jeff. How are you today?
I am going crazy, but that's okay because I can breathe now because I'm at my favorite spot of the week. How are you, Ron?
Good. Came back from 48 hours in Las Vegas. Saw a nice show. Ate a lot of food. Had a good lunch with Chris and his wife. So that was nice. And back in kind of straddling the one last game of the year versus, okay, it's time to breathe myself, a little off season, a little break before the next steps.
Well, the dust has settled. You came back, I assume, with the Brinks truck, cashing in all your early preseason and regular season futures. More limits coming to you, Ron, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Account preservation goes out the window at the time when they start paying off right now. But the sports books in Vegas, they don't know me. They don't care. I'm good with them.
That's all that matters. Washington and Philly, historically, that's been a bad spot for the Commanders, meaning 3 road games, never mind rookie quarterback. I said tongue-in-cheek, 41-21. Philly puts up a 50 burger, 55 to be exact. I applaud what Washington did this year. Dan Quinn, Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels. I don't want to say the emergence of Mr. Terry McLaurin because I've loved the kid since diapers, but you saw the combination now in the offseason, whether they add a T. Higgins, they work on the defense, but a game that they really were never in. Turnovers. Look, any team not playing right now, it's because of the turnover battle. Thoughts on what you saw on Sunday, Commanders and Eagles?
That Washington first drive was impressive, and you thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be a lot of fun. And then I could see that Hurts, we didn't know how close to 100% he would be. He was spot on right away. And you can see that if that continued, Washington, they're a work in progress, and everything they did was fantastic this year, but they weren't going to be able to stop the run, which is double trouble when you have Barkley on the other side of the field. And that would expose them against the pass too, because you had two extremely experienced wide receivers, plus a tight end in Goddard who's really hitting his stride after injury. So they were going to be no match defensively. And then, like you said, they would have to play a clean game offensively, and that didn't happen. And that's the end of their season.
Well, and I said it on my timeline, and you replied. I mean, Washington, that methodical death by 10,000 paper cuts drive, and then Barkley one play, touchdown. And then I'm like, oh my God, Philly's defense going to come back out here. And I said to Twitter, and you replied,
yeah,
this drive will decide it. I mean, if Philly allowed another 10-play drive, they would have been out on the field for 24 plays compared to the Washington defensive one.
Yeah, that would be crazy. And even in this day and age, when you get a commercial after a touchdown, after a replay, after an injury, after a kickoff that goes out of the end zone, so teams get to refresh. But 24 plays in a row is just too much to refresh from. They would have needed the second half kickoff. So yes, you were right. They needed to get off the field that second drive.
Philadelphia now awaited Kansas City or Buffalo. We knew it was going to be a close game. Chiefs here again looking for a three-peat. Josh and the Bills had an opportunity. The ball in hand, go tie it up or win the game and don't take it to overtime. A lot of people criticizing Joe Brady. First half, James Cook not touching the ball enough. Were you critical of the offensive game plan initially, or after you've had almost a week to think about it, were they too conservative?
Yeah, I would rather always place praise as opposed to blame. I mean, it takes a lot to get there. It takes a lot to do something. You need to do something extra or something unusual to knock off a defending champ in any sport. I think the usage of the clock, which didn't backfire, that was concerning to me at the end of the first half. That would be my only real criticism. Yeah, I knew that they were going to get Cook more involved in the second half, so that was fine. I guess the only thing you could say is that Steve Spagnuolo, he was one step ahead of what they were trying to do offensively. Showed them the same exact look so many times, and then crucially in the fourth quarter shows them that look and then blitzes from that look, and then they weren't prepared for it. This is just what happens in a heavyweight fight. Yeah, Josh Allen could have done more. There could have been a few things they could have done offensively, but defensively was finally they were out of their home environment and they were exposed. This was not a good defense 99% of the regular season. And in the end, Kansas City was just a little bit too good for them, to be honest. And Josh Allen, you could argue that he just didn't get it done completely. He couldn't quite get over the hump. But it's not like they haven't played Kansas City tough. It's just, unfortunately for them, they win the regular season battles, and Kansas City seems to win the playoff battles. There's only one Mahomes, and he just happens to be on the Chiefs.
You know, and it's funny because most people like ourselves sitting outside viewing this, taking notes or whatever, fourth downs, Spags is bringing the house, or he's bringing something different, an exotic look that you haven't seen. And Josh is running for his life, and he got the ball out. He just heaved it up a Hail Mary, which obviously was dropped, and that's what everyone talked about. But I want to go back to Andy Reid and the play calling. I mean, Mahomes twice the rollout rights for first downs, one for a touchdown. Juju catches an amazing pass. Didn't stay in bounds, which I kind of laughed at. So they needed one more. 4th down, and what does he draw up? Samaje Perine, who hadn't touched the ball all game. He gets the clincher there. Hats off to Andy Reid.
Yeah, they're going to do these kinds of things. We've seen it even in past Super Bowls where they run these formations and they get somebody open, and it could be a rookie, it could be somebody who's would normally be the 4th or 5th or even 6th wide receiver on the team. They've used Sky Moore in the past. They used Watson in the past. Watson caught a 2-point conversion, I think, in one of the games. So they're not afraid to throw it to anybody. And with more sure-handed ball catchers than they've had before in Hopkins and Brown, Perine, we know he's been tremendous. I mean, he was underutilized in this game, but they didn't forget about him in the key moment. So that's unbelievable. Hunt's playing outside of what I thought his expectations were, and Xavier Worthy is a big part of the game plan, much like we saw Rashee Rice grow and thrive at the end of last year. We're seeing the same thing out of Worthy this year. So the teaching, the coaching, the behind the scenes thing to have these players deliver in key moments. There's only one ball. And you have Hollywood Brown and Hopkins, who used to be a go-to guy for years and years, might see the ball only 2 or 3 times, but winning cures everything, and everybody's buying into what Andy Reid is teaching them.
Do you think Xavier Worthy did score? I did have the anytime score for Xavier Worthy. I did have an anytime score on Dawson Knox, and he got knocked out at the 1. I thought I was going to get a big payday there. You think Buffalo has any regrets in trading that pick to Kansas City for Worthy?
They will say no, but they better have some regrets. It's not just trading, but trading with the team. Buffalo was to the point, not like other teams where Atlanta's trying to win their division or Seattle. I mean, people are trying to win their division. Buffalo was past that point. Yeah, the Jets were a threat at the beginning of the year, maybe Miami. But Buffalo's goal is to beat Baltimore and to beat Kansas City, the perceived 2 teams that stand in their way from getting back to that Super Bowl. And so anything they do with a rival like that better be slanted heavily in their favor. And it was never going to be slanted heavily in their favor to drop down and to get somebody. When you think you have perceived value, you're trading up to get somebody that you think you can't have. You're not trading back and being passive. So I don't like that move at all, and they shouldn't like that move at all in retrospect.
And I have to add this one. As the Patriots sat there, Kansas City makes the deal with Buffalo, and then Buffalo's back on the clock. The Patriots wanted to move up so they could get Leggett. And the Bills said to them, there's no way we can trade in the division. And it's like you said, you just traded with Kansas City, who's your biggest threat, not the Patriots. They trade to Carolina. Carolina gets Leggett. And the whole time, Ron, I'm screaming, okay, that's fine. Go get Cooper DeJean, who had a great game again, a great season. I wanted to pair him with Gonzalez. Yet the Patriots then trade back and they get Polk and Baker, and the rest is history.
Yeah, Polk and Baker, who are players I like, especially for New England, because they were, void of great wide receiver talent, but they top out as a wide receiver too. If you don't have a number 1, that doesn't help you to get both Polk and Baker right now. Maybe it does down the road. As rookies, they sure look like rookies. Cooper DeJean had a what do I call it? Kind of late first, early second round grade for me. Fundamentally sound, coming from Iowa. They know how to ball hawk. They know they're very reliable players when they come out of that system. And so certainly that's certainly has propelled Philadelphia to where they are now. Might have been a good pick for New England. Offensive line might have been a good pick for New England. There's a lot of ways they could have gone. Going wide receiver is nice, but New England had some other needs.
I'm going to bring up the odds and stuff, and then I'm going to go back there for a minute. 2 years ago, Philadelphia had just beaten San Francisco 31-7. They were down to their 3rd string quarterback and awaiting to see who plays. It was the Chiefs. I said this story a million times. I'm going to say it again. Our friend Jeffrey Benson at the Circa opened up Kansas City -2 against Philly. Only person in the world to do that. His first 25 bets from the Sharps, 22 of them were on Philly. So it went to 1.5, 1 to a pick'em to Philly -1, which a lot of people had Philly -1 or a pick'em. This year, Kansas City 1.5 across the board in most spots, 49, 49.5. Westgate opened it up at 50. Initial thoughts on KC -1, and we'll use 49.5 as the under over.
The Super Bowl is a funny thing to actually have a risk at for a sports book, no matter how big you are, because everybody bets the Super Bowl, even the casual football fan, the recreational bettor. And so the smart money is not necessarily going to drive the market. You can't just clone everybody else anymore. You might have a big liability at your own shop. And some places might cater to Philadelphia money. Some places might cater to KC money. For Circa, maybe they don't take that into account and they open it where they think they can open it because they're not afraid to take on risk. But a lot of those other sports books that I visited in Las Vegas, they're not going to want to take on risk. That's the new sportsbook manager, sportsbook operator. So everybody has to know that most of the public money is going to be on Mahomes. That doesn't mean most of the big bets are going to be on Mahomes. But anybody who would have opened this at Pick'em, where my power ratings would have been, or whatever other people's power ratings, I've even heard some people had Philadelphia favored on their power ratings. They would have to be prepared to take a large amount of money, at least initially, on Kansas City right out of the gate, and then be prepared on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the game, maybe to do the same thing. So I think the logical thing was to open it where it was. And I think with coming off two very high-scoring games in the championships, they hung a number probably a little higher than what their gut might have told them. Maybe they would have hung a 49, but they wanted to hang a 49.5, 50, because everybody saw what happened in those two games. Philadelphia, Washington, Kansas City, Buffalo soared over the totals. Really, the totals were never going to be in doubt. So there might have been a little gut reaction in the opening line. We better set it here in case we get flooded with over money. At least that's my perspective. When push comes to shove, it gets beaten down the over-under to where it really should be.
Tonight, the way I understand, I think tonight is the big day for the Westgate Superbook. It used to be a line of 200-300 long, where you'd stand in line to be able to bet 2 or 3 props and then go back in line and do it again. Now in today's world, with at the palm of your hand, DraftKings, FanDuel, all these others, just pencil in the apps, the props there as well. And today had a great conversation with the Sharp, and he's like, listen, everything's geared to the over. So if you just sit and wait, if you like an over, you better bet it immediately. If you like an under, you can wait till next week, and over 55 for Godard will probably be 71 by Sunday. Is there anything that has caught your eye immediately, or you'll be looking for with 10 days to go?
Yeah, I mean, I have almost forgotten that FanDuel and DraftKings are not afraid to come out with their numbers even in the Super Bowl before the Westgate, who studies it, like they really know what they're doing. And South Point came out with the numbers last night, and William Hill is coming out with the numbers. So these are the heavyweights that come out with it, that do it year after year. But FanDuel and DraftKings, they don't care. So we've got, I mean, it's terrible for somebody like me who doesn't have access to some of those and doesn't want to look at this on Tuesday morning after the championship games. We want time to really set our own lines and our own numbers and stuff. So we're going to miss out on stuff right away. And past Super Bowls, most past Super Bowls, you're right, you wait on the unders. But some of the numbers that FanDuel and DraftKings hang, they're not necessary, and they take lower limits for a reason. At the beginning, all books should take lower limits the first couple of days, because they're trying to price the market where it belongs. They're not afraid to hang a bad number and get burned by it if they're taking $50 or $100 as opposed to $500 or $1,000 on a prop. So I think you can grab some overs early or some unders early if you see some particular lines. And I have some feelings on some of the numbers that I've seen as far as rushing and passing and team totals and so on. But I'm waiting for more of the markets to be available so that I know I'm not betting into a necessarily bad line. I bet into a couple of them right now, but I want to get some more action down before I really fully have what's my top plays, what's my middle, what's my next.
Well, we'll have a lot more to ask you on that aspect next Thursday. Since our last talk, Liam Cohen to Jacksonville, Mr. Duval, which didn't come across that well. Brian Schottenheimer, obviously to Dallas. We knew about Aaron Glenn to the Jets. Sounds like Kellen Moore to the Saints. Any thoughts on those four?
Yeah, well, Liam Cohen, what's the over-under of him staying in one place at one time? Kentucky to the Rams, Kentucky to the Rams, to Tampa to Tennessee, 6 jobs in 6 years. And he was asked about it in his press conference, and he gave a rather routine answer that nobody really questioned him about. When you have a chance to be a head coach, you grab it. So I understand this move. What I didn't understand were the 5 other moves that were made. And I don't know if he has enough of foundation. We've seen Josh McDaniels, the next hot thing, go to head coach and fail and then come back to, you're not guaranteed that if you're a hot shot offensive coordinator, even Detroit, Ben Johnson, we're not guaranteeing that he's going to be a great head coach. So we don't know about Liam Cohen. He's going to be a work in progress, which means his coordinators better be top-notch coordinators. So I don't fault him for going there. I certainly don't fault him for waiting until the GM was fired, because what you want to do is, even though Vegas has a poor roster right now, I like the move of Pete Carroll as the bridge head coach right now, who can get things right with the young, grounded GM. And I think Pete Carroll and that GM are going to work well together. I think Davis is going to give them some leeway. Tom Brady's going to be involved. So that one, I kind of see that march in tandem. The other ones you mentioned, did you mention Dallas, Brian Schottenheimer? It's Jerry on the cheap again. It's Jerry saying, well, I don't really want to go this and that, whatever. I might have the guy right here. And I'm not an enemy of Brian Schottenheimer. I think he can do a decent job. But what's going to happen is Brian Schottenheimer is going to have 10% say in the draft decisions. And that's how Jerry likes it. Jerry and his son are going to make the draft decisions, and you're going to play by their rules again, and you're going to get mediocrity in the draft again, and you're going to plug holes. You're going to have a hole here, you're going to plug it. Something's going to leak here, you're going to plug it. You're going to go back and forth, but you're never going to anticipate. You're never going to be proactive. And so no matter who they hired, if they're going to hire somebody where Jerry Jones was still in charge, they're not going to reach their full potential. So that's my feeling there. Bears, I think, are on the right trajectory. Dennis Allen, who was overmatched again, and a coordinator going to head coach. I don't think that's a bad hire as defensive coordinator at all. I think he can low-key get something out of it. And then the offense, Ben Johnson is pretty much going to call the offense. He has a quarterback that he can mold. He's got to work double and triple time on the offensive line. And we'll see what happens. And he will probably have at least some say in the draft room. So that's important. Was there another one?
Kellen Moore?
Kellen Moore possibly to New Orleans. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about New Orleans as a good job, a bad job, and this and that. And there's a little of truth to both of it. It's a good job because they only have to beat Atlanta, who can't draft, Carolina, who has a lot of ways to go personnel-wise, and Tampa Bay, I don't know how they're doing it. Baker Mayfield's amazing, all these different coordinators and stuff. Tampa Bay's still in play, but there's been some really behind-the-scenes noise about their head coach. Here in New Orleans, the biggest issue I have is the roster got old, and they draft an average of 5.5 players per year. They do not, like Atlanta, they can't trade back in the draft. They have to make it a 4 or 5 or at most 6-person draft. And you can't build continuity there. We don't know what they're going to do with Carr at quarterback. Kamara looked pretty good last year, but he's getting to that age of running backs that you wonder how much is left. They've got Chris Olave, who's coming off, a season-ending injury, and who else at wide receiver? Just a bunch of here and there and so on. They've got that older defense, and they're going to lose that institutional memory, that Dennis Allen as coordinator and as head coach. So they're going to take a step back or two before they move forward. I think from the standpoint of Kellen Moore's readiness, he's paid enough dues that I think he's ready for this opportunity. But I hope he can convince the team to start drafting in bulk and to start really creating competition. Otherwise, it's not going to be as easy as it seems.
Russell would like to know, Russell Salem, does Ron like Lou Anarumo to the Colts?
Yeah, Russell, as an Indy fan, I know he's an Indy fan. That's a really good question. And I've actually internally wrestled with that, Jeff. On his best years, Lou really added value to his Cincinnati defense. We know they don't attract a lot of free agents. The owner was a little tight and this and that. People should love to play for a Joe Burrow coach team. If they had a mediocre coach defense, we might still be talking about Cincinnati today. I mean, that's how great a job Joe Burrow did. But in reality, if you look back at his work with an average defense, they didn't have the greatest players, but they did have Trey Hendrickson, who's a great sacker. They did have Jesse Bates, who's a really strong defensive back who, when they let go the last 2 years, their pass defense suffered. I'd say overall, his defenses were probably C+. His pass rush was probably C+. There were times when he was at the top of the coaching, possibly head coaching food chain. He wasn't as good as that, and I really don't believe he was as bad as what Cincinnati showed this past year either. I think the biggest issue is, can he change the Colts to be more of a press defense? I'm just sick and tired of the last decade of the Colts being so passive defensively, and it's not always the coordinator's fault. It's GM. Bauer drafts guys who are more zone defensive back guys, more complementary guys, more that they just don't play an attacking scheme. And I wish they drafted people who were able to play and attract an attacking scheme. And they didn't even draft a DB last year, so at least not a cornerback. So I'd like to see them fundamentally change how they draft to give Lou a chance to thrive, because I think he can be an upgrade.
And it was a division every year that you think about. Man, this was, I thought, a potential for the year for the Colts. I thought Richardson would give them that next level look. I thought there would be regression in Houston. I had no love for the Titans, and then Lawrence gets hurt. So this was their year. Now you look at their division going in next year, Ron. Tennessee with the first pick. Do they hold and take a quarterback? New coach in Jacksonville. And I think this is the year that now Houston takes that next step. So I think they're kind of stuck in what do we do with Richardson? That's my initial take with the Colts.
Yeah, I think you're spot on a lot of that. I mean, if you wanted to get at Houston, this was the year to get at Houston, not this coming year. So that's a problem. Tennessee can go nowhere but up. I had some concerns about them, but still, that was a learning year. They made a lot of mistakes. They're going to be better by osmosis or whatever. And Indy, here we are in Indy, and we don't know anything about Richardson yet. He hasn't played enough games. He hasn't shown week to week the same level of performance. The new age thing, like you were saying, he was a different brand of quarterback, that brand that works now in the 2020s. And that's what made him attractive to Ballard in the first place, to really roll the dice with him. But the bottom line is, when you have to pass and you can't complete close to 60% of your passes, the only quarterback who really has had success when you thought, oh, he's not accurate, has been Josh Allen, who's just broken the mold. Who was unbelievable compared to his college days. No one else has broken that mold. And although Richardson was over 60% in college, he only did it for 11 games. And he did it for a user-friendly offense in Florida when Florida was really good. And we just don't know enough about them yet. It's bought the GM and it's bought a lot of the guys a little bit more time to figure it out, but they better figure it out this year because we don't know if he's durable. We don't know if he's the full answer. I haven't seen their out of conference schedule, but I'm going to guess that the out of conference schedule is going to be a little bit tougher again this year.
And you talked about Josh Allen. I think in the last couple of years, you've seen the passing progression of Lamar Jackson. And so we've seen the last few years him, come a lot better passer, more comfortable. The game is slowed down.
Yeah.
So I think this is a make or break year for Richardson, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, yeah, I agree completely. What Todd Monken and his offensive philosophy has done with Lamar, that's really great. And to be honest, the Baltimore wide receiver core isn't perfect. So he had to do it with basically Zay Flowers, who's undersized but really helpful, and then a few tight ends that helped him along the way. But, so that's remarkable. I see Russell's comment about working with biometrics guy that helped Allen. All that is wonderful, but you also have to have that, that's something inside that know when to go to your second read, when to go to your third read. There's just something innate that you have to have as a quarterback. And I still don't know if Richardson has that.
Last question before I get to my hidden question. Go back to the Raiders. Pete Carroll, Tom Brady, a lot of directions to go. Do you think that or let me ask it this way. If you're Pete Carroll, I know they've kissed and made up. Are you going to make a play at Russell Wilson? Will that make this transition easier?
No, I don't mind age at head coach because Pete Carroll is the youngest 74 that I know. I mean, he's young at heart. He'll give it his all. Nobody's questioning the fact that he could do this job at 74. But Russell Wilson, what's his shelf life? I mean, does he give you 3 more years? Does he give you 1 more year? The bridge quarterback. I guess you could have him there if you're selecting a quarterback and you're going to groom that quarterback. So maybe I backtrack and say, okay, you could, if you can get Russell Wilson on the cheap, maybe you can do that. But Russell Wilson's going to improvise a lot. That's just his nature. I think he was strongly encouraged not to improvise in, where he last was, and Sean Payton couldn't stand that improvisation. And I don't think it's a good marriage because the offensive line, you need a strong offensive line because Russell Wilson's internal clock isn't strong enough even for a veteran quarterback. He wants to hold on to the ball to make that last play. And so I don't think I would go that way. I would rather undergo growing pains with either Cam Ward or Sanders or somebody like that, or get a bridge quarterback that's younger and maybe finds himself like Geno Smith found himself. Maybe we really know that Geno Smith's staying in Seattle? Probably, but we don't know that 100%. So I don't think I would go in that direction. The Raiders have a multitude of needs.
Well, I guess I'd throw a name like, how about a Sam Darnold then, right?
Sure, why not Sam Darnold? Now, because of the pass rush getting through, is going to be interception prone because he's going to throw it. He's not going to take the sack. He's going to throw the ball up in the air, and it's going to be dicey. But when he can make the big play, he cannot make the big play. What you hope to find is gold. What you hope to find is a Baker Mayfield type that can perform like Baker Mayfield. Because he's been written off so many times with so many different coordinators, and he's producing at this incredible level. And maybe Darnold keeps learning and he avoids disaster. If I'm Minnesota, I'm actually keeping Darnold, but the odds are he's not.
Well, there's that other name floating around, Kirk Cousins. There'll be a handful of others. So Jameis Winston, maybe. But we'll get to
Yeah.
that when we get to that. So my hidden question, we got a lot of time for draft talk, and we'll be talking throughout recaps. Heard a good little nugget today for the Patriots. Now, Patriots have the fourth pick. We don't know what's going to happen with the quarterbacks. A lot of people saying the top two generational players in this year's draft are Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. We talked about the Raiders. We know the Giants need a quarterback, but the Pats are sitting at 4. So is it Mike Vrabel's pick? Is it Elliott Wolf's pick? Is it the Kraft's pick? So I heard a name today that will staple that it was a Vrabel's pick. At number 4, the Patriots select Mason Graham from Michigan. Thoughts on that?
Okay. Okay. I haven't really started my draft prep, so I don't know enough about Mason Graham to actually comment specifically about that. What he brings to the table, and maybe what are your thoughts as to why that would be his baby?
More on the defensive side. He grew up with the Patriots, and the Patriots were the Patriots that started the dynasty from the defensive side. Yeah, Tom was the quarterback when they beat the Rams, but the Teddy Bruschi's of the world, the Seymours of the world, the Wolfhards, the list is endless. They went defense, and then the offense evolved. Abdul Carter, the odds of him making it to 4 are slim to none. Travis Hunter, maybe he could be in play, but a few of the locals whispered out that Mason Graham, Michigan, would fit the bill for a Mike Vrabel play.
If that happened, I think they'd be wise to trade back a few spots. Defensive tackles would not normally go that high, even if they're separated. Because a lot of times you have a draft where you have that one person. It was Kyle Pitts at tight end, and then everybody else. It was, last year, Brock Bowers, tight end, and then everybody else. And Brock Bowers didn't go in the top 10. Kyle Pitts at tight end, an extremely rarefied air to go at number 4. So I don't know they would automatically pick a defensive tackle at that particular spot. I do think that fixing the trenches, whether it be offensive line or defensive line, makes a lot of sense for this team. They've got the quarterback, and you want to invest in protecting him. I have a feeling with New England, haven't delved into that, but I always delve into who is the decision maker come draft day, and I have to revise it every year because you have new GMs. We're going to end up with about 7 new head coaches, 6 new GMs. We're going to have, what did I count? 20 new coordinators this year. So 1 out of every 3 spots almost, 20 out of 64 will be different from coordinator. So you have a lot of different things going on. I have a feeling this will be consensus. I think there'll be Kraft, there'll be Wolf, there'll be Vrabel, and they'll all get a say. Usually the GM has the final say. So unless Vrabel pushes, I have to have this guy. And there will be times during the draft that he will get his wish. Maybe it won't be the first round, but it could be the 3rd round, where they pound the table. This is the guy. I know this guy. I know how it works. And Elliott Wolf or any GM has to defer to somebody who played the game at a high level, like Vrabel. So I think it'll be consensus first pick, but off the top of my head, might be a little high for Graham.
Well, and that's the thing. If one of the quarterbacks go, not both of them, then they hold the key where, let's just say the Raiders didn't move up and they want to move up 2 spots to assure themselves Cam Ward or Shador, who slid to them. So then the Patriots can move back. I'm hearing that the tackle from LSU, the Campbell kid, they call him, he's got alligator arms. He fits everything, but he's short armed. I know the kid Banks from Texas could slide, and you can get him in the top 10. So unless Abdul Carter slid to them at 4, I do think they're going to end up sliding back.
Okay. Yeah, it's, New England has a history of trading, so it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for them to work something like that for a team that has their eye on a Carter or a very specific player. And typically the way things have gone the last 2 draft cycles, 3 draft cycles, is you get a lot of value for moving down, even if it's 3 spots from 4 to 7. You might get another first rounder the way these, that first round picks are so valued. So it would make some sense. I do not know. Again, I apologize for not knowing how many draft picks New England has at this particular time. I mean, if you already have 9 or 10, I don't like moving too much. But if you have like the typical number, 7 or so, whatever, then yeah, you try to build your franchise up. Because, for example, if you're the Raiders, I'd rather have 12 picks because you need to create competition. You need to get better at 7 spots, not pick the best player at 1 spot. Brock Bowers was a generational player, and the Raiders won how many games? So it takes more than one non-quarterback to really flip your franchise. And so the Raiders are learning that they have 2 franchise players in Max Crosby and Brock Bowers. Now they need competition at a number of players. So eventually I'd like to see New England with 10 draft picks any way, shape, or form and create competition.
And again, a draft that's real deep at running back, a draft that they say in a lot of other positions is weak, where again, you might try to stockpile for 2026 and 2027.
Mm-hmm.
Go in, get your guys, and then move out. And the last question before we go to your closing thoughts here, you're talking about generational tight ends. Pitts was supposed to be that guy. He hasn't been. Bowers looks like he's that guy. If I said to you, Ron, give me, and I'm not holding to you this because we got time, but what is the initial under over for draft picks for Tyler Warren in your eyes, the tight end from Penn State today?
Yeah, if Tyler Warren came out, let's say Brock Bowers last year didn't come out, and Tyler Warren, it was like this year, and Tyler Warren was that number 1, and there wasn't number 2, then Tyler Warren would be pretty close to that Brock Bowers discussion. But I like about 4 tight ends, and I think there are a tremendous number of tight ends that will have value for a team. But I like Tyler Warren a lot, but there's other guys that are going to be really valuable as well, maybe more than 1 first round pick this year. So I'm not running out to get Tyler Warren in the first 10 picks, to be honest. I like tight ends with rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks. You've heard me mention that they need that bigger target, that reliable target, that extra blocker plus that receiver, that can get you out of trouble in a pinch, rather than a 170-pound wide receiver that a rookie quarterback who's going to make 1 read is not going to find. So I like that. And I like them for teams that have a foundation in other areas where the tight end puts them over the top. How many playoff teams have I said, you look at their tight end group and it's good. You don't find a lot of playoff teams that have bad tight end play, but you find a lot of teams at the bottom that don't have that tight end. So off the top of my head, I think Tyler Warren would be not as high as Brock Bowers was last year. A lot of people couldn't find a landing spot for Brock Bowers. They had him as a top 10 talent, but they couldn't match him up with a team. And Jeff, we know why that was, because there were 6 quarterbacks that were in the mix, which was highly unusual. That's not going to be in the mix this year. So Tyler Warren could go 10th, but actually Brock Bowers is more valuable, but he came out in a 6 quarterback draft. He came 13th because there were 6 quarterbacks. So I think if you compare the two, I'd rather have Tyler Warren in the 11 to 15 range off the top of my head for right now.
All right. As we always wrap up the show, a nice little 7.5-yard button hook for Ron's closing thoughts.
Well, I don't really want to leave people in a lurch completely on the Super Bowl. I'm not going to be ready to make my picks or whatever, but I want to give out 4 keys, early keys that I have to the Super Bowl. Let watchers, listeners kind of chew on them. Let us chew on them as well, And I may come up with completely different keys in a week. But the first 4 keys that I came up with was running back Hunt. That's the first one. Running back Hunt, Kareem Hunt, he's had a revival. His yards per carry is far exceeding what I expected. Now he goes into a situation where Philadelphia's run defense is top 5. So, at least in my opinion. So, what happens there? One of my keys is, can Hunt deliver those extra yards after contact that he's been delivering against this Philadelphia D? What happens in this tug of war? That's my first key. The second key is Kansas City's run defense, which has been remarkably better than the last 5 years, but has drifted down a little bit. There's some cracks, but they're clearly better than they have been. But I'd call them more middle of the pack. But that's not the problem here. The problem is they're going against this guy named Saquon Barkley, who's just in most years would be an MVP candidate, even though it seems to be a quarterback award. What does Kansas City do to limit Barkley? Now, Barkley's had a career of 2-yard gains, 2-yard gains, 2-yard gains, 30-yard gains, 70-yard gains. I mean, a lot of his runs are going nowhere, but then he makes that one juke, that one guy miss who's out of position, and he's gone. I mean, I love that, but there are a lot of no gainers. The question is, who wins that battle, Barkley or the Kansas City defense? That's my second key. The third key is Mahomes himself, who's been magnificent. Turnovers were a problem the first 7-8 games. Remember, he had more than 1 interception per game. I think he threw 1 or 2 against Philly even. The question I have here is, what happens? Can Mahomes stay turnover free against a better Philadelphia defense than they've had in a while, with Cooper DeJean, who you talked about, with Mitchell, who you talked about, with a few other pieces, including Darius Slay, who's very savvy, and a good front 4 and so on? Who wins that battle? Does Mahomes stay turnover free? Because if he does, he's Mahomes. We know that. Or does Mahomes get in trouble because Philly shows him and Fangio shows him a look, or he gets a little, he wants to thread the needle or something like that in the Super Bowl? What happens? That's the third key. And then finally, Philly's offensive line has been top 5 for the last couple of years, maybe more. They had a couple of injuries last week. We know that. They allowed 5 sacks. I think in the last time they played Kansas City, 2023, they showed some pass protection issues even during these playoffs, even against Washington. So I need to know whether or not Kansas City, which has a relatively average pass rush, but they disguise blitzes and with what Spagnuolo does, he really finds a way to get through, even though the stats don't look like they're fantastic. He finds a way to have the sack or the pressure at the right time. Does Philly revert back to what they were, top 5 pass protection, or does Kansas City get the edge? So we've got 4 tug of wars going on, and if we know the answer to those 4, maybe we know the winner of this game. But those are my early keys.
Great keys, and you're right. I mean, we're trying to thread the needle here. The numbers are so sharp for a reason. It doesn't matter at the end of the game. Let's just say this. I said this earlier this week. I haven't looked for it yet. I like Philly first half with the Chiefs to win the game. And that's what happened the last couple Super Bowls. 2 years ago, Philly up 10 at halftime. Chiefs come back and win. 49ers up 10 at halftime. Chiefs come back to win. So I might get cute and creative. We got some great numbers from before the tournament started. Kansas City to beat Philly at 11-1. Eagles to beat Kansas City at 17-1. Mahomes, Super Bowl MVP plus 450. And the 2 cherries on top, and these were at FanDuel, by the way. Hurts to win the MVP 15-1. And Saquon Barkley, who is now plus 250, we have him at 21-1 to win the Super Bowl MVP.
You can just sit back and have a beverage and say, well, that result's good. That result's good. That's the way you wanted. You want to be forward thinking. You want to be anti Jerry Jones. You want to think in advance. You want to be 2 chess moves ahead of the people setting the lines. And if you're not sitting with those, there's not that kind of way that you can deal with that. But there are things called cross sport props that are going to be coming up in a few days, and you can get to a game time situation that's in your favor if you know how to use the cross sport props. But that's fantastic. It's a chess match all the way around, not just on the field, but for us off the field.
Russell Saylor says Philly first half, Kansas City full game 6-1. So there you go, everyone watching till the end of the show. 6-1, Philly first half, KC full game. Thank you, Russell.
And by the way, you mentioned that Philadelphia led in the first half and Kansas City came back and won that game. When they rematched in 2023, it was Kansas City leading 10-0 and Philadelphia came back to win 21-17. So these are teams that they're battle tested. They're not a newcomer to this stage. They're not going to get flustered if they get behind.
No, not at all. As I always wrap up here, Ron, everyone knows on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it today, follow you at RonAceSports. But show schedule with Chris and, football, we still got one big game left, but then the fun really begins with the season recap and getting ready for the draft.
Yeah, so it's hopefully a little quieter, on my end as we get through, and I'll be doing more behind the scenes work. But next Tuesday, Chris and I will be back. We had a little discussion about alternate lines that Chris has really has almost an advanced degree in terms of how to use the alternate lines, although he himself acknowledges that it's always a work in progress. You're always learning new things. And I want to expand upon that and ask him a few more questions on Tuesday. So if you like brainstorming topics, visit Chris and I on Tuesday. Chris, Ted, and I will be back on Thursday. This Sunday afternoon or evening, I believe I'll be on with Brady Cannon for a couple of segments as well. So who knows? Maybe I'll come up in a couple of other segments, but otherwise a lot of behind the scenes stuff, Jeff, right now. We'll just get the paper and pencil ready, and it could be on a beach, it could be in front of my computer, it could be somewhere, but we'll take a deep breath after 10 days from now.
Well, my phone's been blowing up. Bernie Fratto from Fox Sports Radio wants me, I think, to come on at 5 a.m. on Sunday. I assume you and Brady will be on a little later, I assume, on the Sports Grid. So God bless you there. So shout out to Russell Saylor as always. Everyone watching Standing Room Only on Twitter and X. If you haven't followed us, head on over to YouTube at East Coast Sports Investors. Subscribe, it's free. And of course, make sure you're following Ron at RonAceSports. Everyone, thank you so much. Have a great, great day. And I'll be back at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning with Andrew McGinnis on his YouTube channel for Wager Talk, and 11 a.m. the NCAA Insiders talking college baseball. Stay tuned.